I'm just going to briefly introduce our speaker for today, who is Dr. David Noye. And Dr. David Noye is a seasoned innovator, engineer, and serial entrepreneur with a distinguished career spanning artificial intelligence, energy systems, and industrial design. He began his career at Ghana's Gratis Foundation, a nationwide technology transfer organization, where he played a transformative role in supporting startups and scaling enterprises. He served as Director of Engineering Design, National President of Ghana National Packaging Cluster, a UNIDO-sponsored program, and National Chair to late Prof. F.O. Kwame in developing Ghana's engineering design standards for Ghana Standards Board, an EU-funded project. He also supported SME development through working capital and equipment hire purchase evaluations. Dr. Noye earned his doctorate degree in industrial technology, nanotechnology specialization in the US, where he later served as an adjunct professor at Southern Polytechnic State University, now part of Kennesaw State University, and director of nanotechnology at Georgia Aerospace. As founder of Nano Research Inc. and AI Fix AI LLC. He leads R&D in AI automation, energy storage, and intelligent systems. His commercialization focuses include tech licensing, startup acceleration, and product line expansion. He has also contributed to major EU, CIDA, NSF, and US DOE projects.
Nancy, thank you so much for the wonderful introduction. So instead of giving a speech, what attempted to do today is to walk us through how we can actually integrate AI into our business after this short meeting. So this is the outline of what I'll go through, but because the time is short, I will not go through the topics. I'll just go straight to the presentation. First of all, we have AI in general, which we know that is, how they call it, is part of computer science. And then we have the more like traditional AI and a generative AI. And the way I want to think about it is AI is like how we went to school, where we learned 1, 2, 3, or A, B, C, D. And when they ask you to say A, B, C, D, I'm able to say A, B, C, D up to Z, okay? Or I'm asked to count 1, 2, 3, I can count up to 100. That is traditional AI. But I wonder what the wonderful or magical aspect of generative AI, that for which we are here today, is like an artist. Okay, if you give an artist a paint and a brush, right? I mean, he can come with something magical, something new. And that is what generative AI is all about. So that's the way we should picture it. Generative AI is for creating new things, whereas traditional AI is to tell us what we know already. So this is the way I want to think about it. And the way it works is that to take you back to the scene of how it's done, normally you take a lot of data and you divide the data into two. You use one to train the AI. And then there's something called generative AI model, which we'll see very soon. I remember when I started talking to Sandlin about AI, the first question he asked me was that, but Dr. Noye, but most of the data I use in the West, it's not going to be biased towards Africa. I say, yeah, what you are saying is true. But also, when we begin to see the opportunity, we can see how to resolve that biases going forward. In any case, so you have data, and then that data that you use to develop a model. And then, like a chat GPT, I can write something and then generate me an output. And the output could be a text, an image, an audio, a video, or a data. And then we can see examples of this is how it relates to our business. But quickly, not to go too deep into this, but these are the models that are used to generate, are used in generative AI. Okay. And like we all use ChatGPT, and you use a GPT, develop 1, 2, 3, 4, and then going forward. And then the generative adversarial network, it works like somebody making fake money, and then you have a detective trying to, catch the person making a fake money, out of which something new is created. And the phishing model we've seen like a DAL-E or people use Midjourney for creating new drawings, other models. And variational encoders, auto-encoders, oftentimes use, if you want to create a synthetic data or fake data, that's when you use these kind of tools. Now, but these are the most interesting areas that we're going to focus on. How it will benefit our business. We said that generative AI can give you 5 outputs. Text, therefore, I can use AI to write, a business plan, funding proposal, investor pitch, or my business, human resource policy for my business. For images, I can use to, design a brochure, a banner, and things like that. For audio, I can do a voiceover or create a music, and then for a video, I can have synthetic videos like a deepfakes, which are basically they are synthetic videos and explainer videos. We've been seeing these things around, and they're all done by generative AI. And then data, you have a synthetic data set, data that you can create your own data based on maybe one particular information. You can be able to do that. So we'll move to the next stage where we begin to look at some examples. So in general, when it comes to business cases, these are some of the general areas that we can use generative AI to do for business applications. The broader areas is in terms of creating content, like writing a business plan or marketing campaigns, or developing software like a fintech, or designing new products like a packaging design, or for developing learning materials like a virtual labs, and then do a scientific research to find new materials, and then also automate your business for business automation. And interestingly enough, all these things I'll be able to do all that. So when we move to the next slide, I'll be giving specific examples of how we can be able to use generative AI for our business. Now, in the content marketing aspect for small startups, so I can use it to write a proposal, a business proposal, or write my own business plan, and then I can use to describe, my product. Or you can write a newsletter and then tell the AI that every day send a newsletter to my clients, but vary A, B, C, D variables. Okay, and then the AI will be doing that every day, and then send it to your client. You can also use to create brands for your company. As a small business, you're always cash constrained, and because of that, generative AI becomes your friend and your partner. One example of application is, for example, somebody has a restaurant, the menu is in Swahili, for example. You can use the AI to translate it into what? English. So if I visit maybe some aspect of East Africa or South Africa where they speak Swahili, and I can just see on the table or even on my phone, right, a Swahili translated into what? English, and I can understand the menu. Yeah. And these are all 24/7. Once you do them, they can be there 24/7 to work for you. So in summary, for content creation and marketing for small businesses, you can use AI to do so many things all by yourself without anybody. And you can designate them as maybe my market researcher, and therefore do market research for me, or find me more customers, and AI will be able to do that for you. And then when it comes to software development, these days, fortunately, because of generative AI, you can go to, for example, ChatGPT, and if you understand how to write programs and say, okay, I want you to help me write a program to generate a business plan. It will give you all the codes on how to do that. And if you know how to deploy it, you can then deploy it, and people can be able to use it. And then the interesting thing is that the bug detection components, as you use the tool, it can be able to tell you mistakes in your AI. Instead of waiting to make the mistake at the end, it will be pointing them out to you and can automatically correct them whilst you're actually in the script that you are developing. And then for development operations, you can then partner or collaborate with somebody, for example, maybe Dakar, Senegal, can partner with somebody in maybe Nairobi, Kenya, and they can deliver an AI tool, a client in Johannesburg, South Africa, for example. And because of this power of AI, now suddenly we can have our youth in Africa creating all kinds of businesses or products, okay, without limitations. Your limitation is going to be maybe your computer and power and your imagination. Almost anything you want to do, you cannot be able to create it just by the power of generative AI. And an interesting thing that happened here, for example, I was doing some work for NASA to develop a product, and then there's a software that's already on the market, and we also need to challenge current assumptions. And I know that the software is too complicated, the one on the market. I said, no, I'm not going to use this one. So I went to ChatGPT, and I want to write a particular program, and I was able to create a complete new tool for designing batteries. Okay, and then so I put in and simulating, the way the battery is going to behave. So I designed a battery first before I actually made it, just because of code auto generation and that you can use for generating new apps. Similarly, when it comes to design, like example that I gave you can use generative AI to generate tools for designing 3D models, textile materials, furniture, logos, brand mockups. As a practical example, I have a friend, I wanted to introduce him to Stanley so they can bring him on board to help other candidates, other students. He told me, okay, I want a packaging. I said, okay, no problem. I just went ChatGPT, write a code, a prompt, and just a nice package sent to him. He said, oh, this is so nice. Everybody likes it. But it took me just a minute. He was talking to me on the phone whilst I was writing the prompt, and I was able to do it. Okay. So you can use generative AI to do so many, things. Yeah. Now, for example, in terms of African example, in Africa, we have so many cultural identities. I mean, we have wonderful designs. Now you can take one, and then once you take one, you can then be able to populate it into different designs and then advertise them online and then sell them. And you can also have your own digital ads and things like that. Now, when it comes to education and training, I've created so many training courses. I'll try to give practical examples. Myself and Crack Atlanta University, for example, we got a grant for Department of Energy to train people how to make batteries. And then in the process, we felt that, look, the time is too short for the students. And this just happened here last week. So we did a practical session, and we developed AI tool, a virtual lab, battery lab, that would train people how to make batteries. Very interesting. So they spent a day, because it's too short, a day in the physical lab to see how things physically are. And then suddenly they have the AI virtual lab that they are using to do all kinds of experiments. And then you can also develop training content, which for various programs, like for example, I've developed an AI tool for helping people to integrate AI into their business. I call it Executive Mind. Okay, and this will be online, and that people can use. Then you come to technical vocational education. In Africa we are short of capital and limited by equipment. Therefore, you can now be able to create virtual labs, okay, or digital twin of whatever you've known that exists, okay, and then you can be able to experiment with it or simulate its operation. So there's no limitation, nothing should hold us back as to what we can do. Then when you come to scientific research, for example, in terms of application, example like somebody, say, for example, in Khartoum, Sudan, for example, has maybe 1 acre of a land. That person wants to grow some product, let's say corn or maize, for example. Now, you can look for data from maybe NASA about what happens, the soil in that area. And can then say, okay, now I have 1 acre, I have these varieties of corn or maize, and then this variety of corn and maize, now with my 1 acre, there are these fertilizers that are available, okay? And assume I don't even know the various types of fertilizers, but I know fertilizer is available. Let's say 5 types of fertilizer. You can then simulate the 1 acre with the various fertilizer, how they work, and then maybe the number of corns I should grow and a variety of corns, and then it will generate for you the yield I can get 1 acre plot. And then you can say, okay, fine. Based on all this, I'm going to use this variety of maize. and then this particular maybe fertilizer, for my agricultural project. When it comes to discovery, I mean, wonderful things are happening. Okay, you can use to discover a drug or rural diagnostics. So, for example, I developed a AI tool for new material discovery. What did I do? And an example, we all know that when we use our phone, the phone becomes very, very hot, for example. So it's okay, fine. Now we are not able to control it. It's okay. Now, if we are not able to control it, because we all use the phone can hot, and then you have to leave it to cool down or whatever, or my laptop can hot, you have to leave it to cool down. It's okay, fine. I want to discover a new material for making cooling batteries, for example, right? You can set your parameters and then give the AI a job to go and do, right? And you can come up with new material formulations, for making batteries. And then I remember when COVID-19 came, at the time, I was working on some AI tool where when you cough, it will tell you what kind of coughing that you have to assist doctors and nurses, right? And this can help in the rural diagnostics aspect. Okay. And then when it comes to renewable energy system modeling, you can still apply AI to do all kinds of stuff. So, for example, the sun, sometimes can get a sun from morning to after about, say, 9 p.m. Very interesting. But maybe the intensity can be maybe just about, say, 5 hours. When you go to a place like, say, Accra, Ghana, for example, you can have a temperature, the temperature in Ghana is very, very high, right? Right? So maybe it could be about 6 to 7 hours and the temperatures are different. You can use this information or develop an app where you put in these variables. It can come out with a product that is different from the one from the US, different from the one from Ghana, right? And this can be done in maybe Liberia, Monrovia, Liberia, or Kenya, and Nairobi in Kenya. Yeah, so with just specific data, you can then be able to come up with a new product for that particular locality.
So the first question that we have for you, Dr. Noye, is from Santani, which says, doesn't AI in general pose an intellectual property risk by storing your ideas and incorporating them into its machine learning process, potentially using this data to refine similar ideas for others? If you have used generative AI, how have you guarded against this?
This is very, very important, good question. But a good thing, as I said, when it comes to generative AI, you're always creating new things. So that's an issue, right? And because of that, it's difficult to say that the outcome I have is your outcome. Okay, that's one difference. Now, the other thing too is that the only way that you can claim somebody has done something wrong if you take the person's prompt, right? Like if you write a prompt for generating maybe some particular product, and I copy that prompt. But what you own now, when it comes to AI, is the prompt that you write. Okay, that's your owner. That's what your creative tool. So far as prompts are not the same, then the outcome is going to be different. Okay. A slight change will give you a different outcome. For example, there's a business plan generator that I shared with Sandlin that if you can make it available to the scholars. And you only describe your business idea to generate a plan for you. Now, if you make the same language for the prompt, if you make one change, it gives different outcome, completely different outcome. Okay. So short answer to the question is that you own the prompt. And because you own the prompt, if somebody copy your prompt, you're going to have copyright issues, intellectual property issues. But the outcome is always going to be different when it comes to generative AI. One last thing I will add to that is that I think recently some people brought this same issue to me. So I've developed an AI tool that can embed into the text and the image a copyright that you cannot see. But there's also within that tool, you can open and say, okay, now this is a copyright material. So now there are tools available to help you to protect your IP.
Second question is from Michael Ndu, which says, how does loan eligibility AI work in fintech?
The way it works is that, let's say somebody in Rabat, Morocco, for example, right? Creates a fintech app for giving loans. Okay. Now, so this person then have maybe sometimes depend on the policy in that particular area and that particular jurisdiction. So the person may have some money in the bank, and then so the person then creates an app. And then the app, then the person put a criteria there. The criteria will be, so let's say, for example, let me give an example about Ghana that I'm a little bit aware of. So, for example, they have now in Ghana, at first, let me use the contract to just explain. Whereas in the US, you can find anyone address, you can find a person. In Ghana, we didn't used to have that. Now, everybody now has a digital address. So you can now be able to find anybody in Ghana. So to do the eligibility thing, you program into that particular app, maybe the person should put in maybe the digital address, right? The person must put in maybe where the person works, okay? And then that app should be linked to the person's bank account and where the person works. So the tool will then automatically go and then search whether a person actually has money in the bank account, right? And whether a person actually works, okay? And then based on that, you can then be able to say, okay, you are eligible for this particular loan. So it depends on what you plan at the back end, and then to be able to tell you that, okay, you're eligible or not eligible. So I give an example of, say, for example, Ghana, where somebody can take a loan, you cannot find a person. But fortunately, because of digital address, now you can find a person. So you become part of your criteria for eligibility. And also, the person should be able to pay back the loan. So, you have to find out where the person's working. So you should be able to, your app should be able to track the person to its workplace. And then say, okay, now this person has a work. Okay. And then it goes into the person's bank account. It can be able to say, okay, fine. For the past 6 months, this guy is being paid every month. Therefore, the person works. And then through that, you can then be able to, have know those who are qualified or those who are not qualified. So that's the answer.
Our final question, how do you decide on which generative AI tools to pick? I mean, of course, you mentioned a few throughout your presentation, but are there some that are better than others? Are there some that you would go to for different reasons? Are people using Chat GPT? There's Gemini. Which would you recommend would be a good starting point for people that are looking at starting to use AI tools?
This is very important. So what I do is what I'm going to share. So I often create my own AI tools, but I call these ones like the generative, the ChatGPT, German Copilot, Coe. I call that infrastructure, and that's why this open up a whole new opportunity for Africans. You should take them as infrastructure, and you have to build the AI tools on it. So what I do is I can create a specific prompt and use maybe ChatGPT, and use the same thing maybe Gemini, right? Use the same thing what Copilot, and then compare. And that for me is also a validation. So that's the way I use this particular what I call AI infrastructure, right? That's the way I use them. I always use them to compare it themselves, yeah. And I always benefit from that all the time.
Okay, thank you so much for not only an insightful presentation on generative AI and its different use cases, but also for giving us practical examples during our Q&A.